events are infrequent to justify it near the Indian Ocean. You see the interesting... The animals had more sense than we did. I don't know, they have a capacity that we must have lost there. But the point is that there are factors and choices that people make that can make them vulnerable. The New Orleans situation, tragic as it was, shouldn't have come as a surprise insofar as you're living in a city, most of which is below sea level. And you're living on a coastal area. When Hurricane Camille came in years before, and many before that, we recognize there are certain patterns that are going on, and you build a house and live there at your own risk. You therefore do not have the right to raise the clenched fist against God and say, why did you allow this to occur? So even when it comes to natural evils, much of it is related to our own decision, so that moral evils and natural evils can work together. Now, why didn't God stop it? And that's a question we can't fully ask. Why doesn't God stop bullets from actually turning into why doesn't he turn them into marshmallows? Why doesn't he stop the sound waves when a person wants to swear at another person? You see, there are times, however, when God will intervene in powerful and remarkable ways, but we cannot demand that he do this at all times. There are mysteries involved, and God has purposes. And there are the dangers in this world. But even there, again, I want to say that while God, you don't want to say, is to blame for an evil thing, at the same time, he can turn evil into good. And I believe that this is an important perspective that we must embrace in this present darkness. We realize that we are dealing in a world where there is a great deal of uncertainty, but there is a God who does love us, who is in control, and who is accomplishing things even in this disease-death environment with a satanic warfare, with human flesh, the rebellion in the human heart and so forth. In spite of all that, he's accomplishing a purpose, and we will look back and recognize that he does all things well. Any thoughts before I continue?
Yeah, how about if you live in Fargo, North Dakota?
What about it?
I mean, is that you shouldn't live there? It's cold.
No, Midwest, tornado.
We're talking about a flood. Yeah, yeah. What were you saying?
No, I mean he was meant.
Yeah, he's talking about the flood. Yeah, yeah. I'm just saying that again, these things happen. Floods should not be a surprise when you live near a body of water. I mean.
So what should our proper response be when you?
I think that we should not be surprised in the physical world when these things occur. I think that our decisions do have a bearing, though, on certain things. Not to say, however, that these things are done just because of human error. I'm not claiming that, but I think it does mitigate part of the problems we've been talking about. But I do, at the same time, think that we have to recognize that this is a world where these things occur. And there's no place where you're immune. What about a place where your son drowns in a shallow river? You see, I mean, my point here is that there is a world that's around us that has these possibilities. Having said that, though, this world isn't the final thing. What if it's possible for God to use that flood in Fargo to actually draw people closer to himself? What if it's possible for him to create the condition, to use that as a condition for immediate and in some cases ultimate moral perfecting? Do I have a right to say that that can be totally absurd and have no meaning and varying in purpose? This is a thing I have to bear in mind. Yes?
Lewis is over there waiting.
Oh, I can't see Lewis.
I just had a point.
Where are you? Oh, there you are back there.
And they had a NASA astrogeophysicist, which is somebody who studies the Earth from space. And somebody called in and said, you know, is it a sign of end times that there are earthquakes and tsunamis? It was right after 2004. And he said, no. He said, if you have a vibrant, alive planet, there has to be heat, there has to be pressure. He said, if none of these things are occurring, your planet's dying. And I think you can analogize it to, you know, a young child. If you have a child that sits in the corner and reads all day, it might not be the healthiest child.
Yeah.
Read Shakespeare.
Activity.
Reading Shakespeare. Don't take that personally.
Here, here, here.
See, even that cruel remark can be redemptive. Yeah, it's the nature of a physical world, and again, where there are bodies of waters, there can be floods, there can be drownings, there can be pain, and so forth. We should not be surprised. Where there are roads, people will be hit, and there will be accidents. Again, the question is going to be whether we demanded that we would be utterly insulated from that adversity. And that is something God never promised in this dangerous world. We live in a dangerous planet. Maybe you've noticed that. People are the most dangerous thing on the planet, but there's also dangerous places to live. And we have to recognize it. The question isn't why did this happen, because we can't always answer that question, but what can we learn from the situation and what redemptive process can we go? Remember again this question about the why. Why did this happen to me? What have I done to deserve it is not as good a question as what do you want me to learn from this situation? In my own life, how can this be used redemptively? And even though I do not know the answer, I know one who does. And so there's a perspective or a point of view that we can embrace where we have the why of guidance. And we recognize then that there is grace that we get, and we rarely thank God for grace, but we grumble about when things go wrong. Yeah. I think you were next, and then...
I've often wondered if you're defiant when you're in your circumstances. Will God say, okay, if this didn't get your attention, you know, I've just lost my job now, I'm giving you cancer. Will he deal like that?
Yeah, and I don't know, I don't want to say he's going to give you this and he's going to give you that. I think it'd be a dangerous thing for me to say that, because that kind of construal could make God seem almost sadistic. You're going to hate me now but love me later. So I never want to say this is what happened or why he's doing something. I don't know the mind of God in these things. That's why I want to stress there's a definite mystery. All I'm saying is there are perspectives we can embrace that help us recognize that there can be purposes behind this. But again, why it would be that one person gets caught, a murderer, and he's prevented from committing further murders, and another does not, I don't have a full and clear answer to that. So, yes, Rob.
You were saying that just living on this earth, you know, we're going to have earthquakes, we're going to have tsunamis, we're going to have struggle, that pain and suffering are unavoidable. Living in a fallen world, in essence. In the new heavens and the new earth, I know Revelation says there will be no more crying, no more pain, will wipe away every tear, no more death, no more sorrow. Will there be struggle in the new heavens and the new earth? Will there be earthquakes or not?
Yeah, I would be surprised if there would be any natural disaster in that context in a perfect creation where there is no longer the hint or taint of the fall. I think the fall, the imagery there of bringing forth thorns and thistles and now having to work by the labor, by the sweat of your brow, suggests, and there are several other areas that suggest this, that the world is in a condition that it will not be, that it is, according to Psalm 102, I think it is, it's kind of wearing out like a garment. But if you turn with me to Romans chapter 8, you get this perspective as well, that it really is wearing out. It says, and this is right after verse 18, the verse I quoted earlier when Paul says, I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory that is to be revealed to us. Then he goes on to say in verse 19, for the anxious longing of the creation waits eagerly for the revealing of the sons of God. For the creation was subjected to futility. That has to do with the idea of the fall. Not willingly, but because of him who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself also, and note this imagery, will be set free from its slavery to corruption into the freedom of the glory of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation groans and suffers the pains of childbirth together until now. And not only this, but also we ourselves, having the first fruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves groan within ourselves, waiting eagerly for our adoption as sons, the redemption of our body. So here you have a perspective that invites us to see that this world is distorted, and that these kinds of things, I think, are only of a temporary nature, and that in our resurrected bodies we will not be subject to pain or disease or death or sorrow or suffering. I think those things will be done away with. But the painless, tearless world of heaven is not a world we are in this condition